Okay, well, good morning. We're happy to have you join us here today for another presentation of our God at Work panel that we are putting on at First Sebring Church here in Sebring, Florida. So we're very glad you could join us. I'm John McClure. I'm the panel moderator for this series. We have two fine guests this morning. We have Dan Andrews from Legacy Bicycles and Phil Statler from Statler. I always call it wealth management, not investment services.
Statler Financial.
Statler Financial.
There you go.
The reason I say wealth management is anybody can invest, but it takes a little while to get wealth.
That's true. That's true. It takes some time.
Anyway, guys, we're really happy to have you here with us today. We've had a really good pre-discussion and just talking about the way God is working in our lives and the different things that go on with us. So, Phil, I'm going to start with you. You're Statler Financial.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is to advise people how to invest their money and do well with that, I hope. So.
That's the idea.
That's always a good idea. I thought I'd leave you an opening with
this. This coronavirus was not helpful to the markets, but it has obviously bounced back relatively quickly. So, but that's really, I feel like that a part of our job, and really the main focus of our job is to get people through that and get them into retirement and then last through retirement, right? That's,
sure.
I've always heard this example, but retirement is climbing a mountain, right? I mean, life is a mountain. So you climb up and you get to the peak, and that's retirement. Well, you haven't survived until you come down the mountain. And so that's really what retirement is coming back down the mountain. And more people get killed coming down a mountain than going up. And people don't realize that. And so that's really our focus.
I know it hurts my knees.
That's right. It hurts more to go down than it does come up. You're right.
Well, I'm trying to figure this out. So if retirement's the top of the mountain, why does the mountain keep growing as I keep climbing? I don't get that.
You just haven't figured out when to retire yet. That's the problem, see?
That's on you, brother. That's on you.
Maybe your wife just doesn't want you home that much, right?
Trump said we went through the shortest recession ever. Is that the truth?
It seems to be. I mean, if we can still say the recession's over, I'm not so sure we can do that from an
I don't think so.
standpoint yet.
We actually might be climbing out of it only to hit the roof.
Oh, let's not be a naysayer here.
Never happened.
Realist.
So let's get back to
Glass
what I
half
want to ask you about. So when you opened your business, how long have you been open first as a business? Just you working?
So I went on my own in 2001 is
Okay.
when I switched from being the accountant tax guy to doing financial planning.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 2001 is when I really got that focus and kind of left the accounting field behind and focused on financial planning.
Do you feel that God called you into the field of financial planning?
I do. I felt like that, really even earlier than that. If you look back, and I started out, I've owned several accounting practices over the years, but in 1995, I got my securities license to help my tax and accounting clients because I felt like I could do a better job than what I saw them getting out on the street. So that was my emphasis to really make that change. And as I did that, I grew to love that more than I loved accounting, which I never really loved accounting. I like tax work, but accounting never was a favorite of mine anyway, which led me to several decisions, right? So from there, I entered into a partnership with Jeff Carlson, and so we had an accounting partnership, which allowed me to develop that even more to the point then that I could leave that partnership and focus on financial planning. So yeah, that was.
So Dan, you operate Legacy Bicycles now.
I do.
So how do you feel about that? Or do you feel you've been in bikes for a long, long time? You like outdoor activities? I think you like doing things outside.
Yeah, but interesting story. So yeah, I came back from college, and my dad and I opened my first bike shop in 1995, and after doing it for about 10 years, I just felt burnt out on retail. Had spent a lot of time and effort in building things that I maybe felt like hadn't fulfilled what I thought they would, and be a stimulus to the business that I thought they would. So I kind of lost my way for 4 or 5 years, and through that, one of the most embarrassing parts of my lifetime, but I ran the Sebring Chamber of Commerce. I was the CEO there for a couple years, and God, I made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot and grew a lot, but had to hit rock bottom to learn and grow. And during that process, I actually ended up losing my job with the chamber and going through some legal processes that really made me hide my head in shame for years. I couldn't walk into Publix. The only place I ever walked into that I felt comfortable with during that period of time was here at the church. And it's interesting because it's our church family that got us through that. When through that process and the mistakes I made, I ended up being charged and arrested. And through that process, the first people, here I am being arrested, and you think you're going to be shunned, and the first people on my doorstep were my church family. And I felt like I had just gotten married or something, because it was like just this constant rotation of the church family coming and praying with me and letting me know that this wasn't the end, and that this is an opportunity, and not an opportunity that most people would think of as an opportunity, but it was just that, and it really helped me to reshape my foundation, and so through that, I was blessed to have an opportunity to work with a friend of mine, Greg Griffin. I say blessed jokingly, because if you know Greg, I don't know how much of a blessing it was, but it truly was a blessing at that time. I joke, but I kind of floundered through some different things. Laura lost her job during that same period of time, and we were scared to death we were going to lose our home, and it's just the one thing that never changed was we were grounded in our faith in that foundation, and it was because we had hit a pretty low place in our lives. And, from that, I met some individuals, and I was able to get back into the bike business, fall back in love with what I had kind of always been in love with, just kind of had burnt out on. And so we opened Legacy Bicycles in 2011, and we've just been growing ever since. It's not easy, and you don't get rich in the bike industry, but people ask me all the time. My father was an insurance agent, and they asked me, well, why didn't you go in the insurance business? Those guys make a killing, They make loads of money. And I said, you know why? It's because Dad would come home every day stressed out about things he couldn't control. And I don't want to be in that environment. I want to be in an environment where I can kind of control my destiny. I can kind of control, as much as you can control in retail, what happens in my business. And I want to be in a business where people want to come in, don't have to come in. And that was the difference for me. And so that's why I've kind of always been that retail-oriented, customer service, people interaction type of business. So that's where I'm at.
I think so much of it depends on how you measure what we call wealth, because I think people that are happy are wealthy, and people that may have a lot of money but yet are unhappy, I could not consider wealthy in the sense that wealthy to me means that wealth and health go together kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how you measure your wealth, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
You have to look at your family. You have to look at people you interact with, how things are, if your needs are taken care of, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, one thing that also happened during that time is when I was with the chamber, we formed the Heartland Triathlon, and that was kind of my baby. I loved it. I put my heart and soul into it. I spent 2 years getting the concept ready to introduce, ran it for 2.5 years under the chamber, and then when I got buried, it went away, and it was like my baby was pulled away from me, and I had to sit on the sideline watching other people run something that, one, I felt was mine, and two, that I just was so passionate and loved. And it's kind of funny how these things come full circle. Cherie Starr and Patrick High ran it for the next 7 years, and they approached us 3 years ago and said, we're ready to retire. We're done. You want your baby back? So it's kind of funny how some of these things come full circle, and now it's back in our possession, and we had to postpone it this year. So whatever.
A lot of postponements this year.
Yeah,
Yes,
there
yeah,
a lot.
for
You're right.
sure. So Philip, at work, what are some of the things you do to let people know of your faith? I mean,
I think a lot of it is, especially we get into situations like what we're going through right now, the coronavirus, the riots, all the unrest and uncertainty that's out there. And all that's in the Bible. It's all biblical. We know how this all ends, right? And we know there's going to be tough times ahead. And so I think that's a conversation that I have on a regular basis when I'm sitting down with clients, is that because there's that uncertainty, there's that concern look that a lot of people have. And so we have that conversation a lot in my office. And I do have a lot of clients that have a lot of faith. I mean, that seems to be I guess you attract those people that are kind of like you, right? And so we have, most of our clients are faith-based, at least to some degree, right? And so it's not a hard conversation to really have with them. I guess like a lot of people, it's all about comfort, right? And stepping outside of your comfort zone is something I struggle with all the time. And having what I call a cold conversation with somebody is an area that I continue to work on, and is uncomfortable, which is what it takes to grow. You have to be uncomfortable to grow.
those cold conversations can be difficult.
They can.
Yeah,
They
especially
can.
when you don't know what the other side's gonna, what
Yeah.
that
What the
result's
rebuttal's,
gonna
that's right.
be,
What the
right?
rebuttal's gonna
And when
be,
you're a
yeah.
professional, you're trying to attract clients, and so you bring something like this up, and well, how do you feel about God? And
Right.
can I talk
Yeah.
to you about the Lord? Well, if they don't want to talk about it, it drives them away.
Yeah.
And you say, wait a minute, what happened to my client base? so those
Yeah.
kinds of things, that's a risk you
Yeah.
take.
It took me a long time to grow in my faith to where I was okay with whatever happens on the other end. I don't really care.
Right.
I
Well,
wanted
that's-
to take this
I agree.
opportunity to share God's word and the love that He has for each and every one of us. And it took me a long time. I'm still not.
Well,
I'm not John McClure.
Well, I'm not that way either. There's a difference, I think, in welcome to the shop. Can I tell you about Jesus? Walk in,
Right.
Because that's one. I mean, some people might do that. I don't know, but I think most people are attracted to the Lord through the way they see you live your life.
Yeah.
And by that I'm talking about people say I want to be like I want what you've got. I don't know what it is, but I want it because I don't have that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that certain something, that certain certainty of how things are going to be,
Yeah.
a certain poise that you might have. There are times I really do try to listen to the Holy Spirit. So if He says pray with this person, I'll pray with him.
Mhm.
If I don't feel that, I won't.
Yeah.
It's not everybody comes in the office and says, hey, come on back here, let's pray. But there are times things come up, and they tell me about things going on in their lives, and I say, well, can we pray about that?
Yeah.
Almost always I say, please, can we do that?
And see, you guys have a different opportunity than I have too,
That's
because
true.
I'm standing in front of one, and sometimes there are 3 or 4 other customers in the store. But I've had scenarios where I like to look, and if I see a cross hanging around their neck, I'll use that as a lead in. I'll say, oh, I really like that cross around your neck, and it helps begin the conversation. But I still haven't got to the point where I'm fully comfortable in the retail showroom,
And you might not.
taking that opportunity. But
You
Well,
know?
I know through this, I was telling you before we went on air that we kind of do this surge, and that's what I'm in right now, where I've seen a lot of people in the last 5 weeks doing reviews. And part of that review process is just catching up on life, what's happening. And so there's been, talking about the coronavirus, how that's impacted them. And I've had several clients, that they've had family members that have lost their jobs or lost their businesses because of that. And so One of the things I've started doing and been really kind of cognizant of that, and not that I necessarily share that with them, but I've started kind of a prayer list that
Yes.
we've started keeping, and as we learn things about clients that we need to be praying about, it goes on that list. And then I've tried to, not necessarily right away, but periodically send them an email or a text message, say, hey, I've been praying about this, or I've been praying about that. I hope things are going well. And I, you hope that has an impact on them. I mean, that the prayer has an impact. But I've tried to do that since all this coronavirus has really kind of kicked
I think
up.
what you're doing is huge, because whenever you send somebody, when you say, I'm going to pray for you about this, okay, you can pray for them then,
Right.
or you can pray for them separately through your prayer list. But to let them know later that, hey, I've been praying for you about this thing, just speaks volumes to those people.
Yeah.
When I receive an email like that, it just lifts me up hugely, and I just
It's so
feel-
personal.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very personal. And the other thing I'd follow up on a little bit is your prayer list, that you have one at all. Because I think by having this prayer list, so often when we do our morning prayers, they're unstructured. And so if we have a list like that we can follow for structure,
That's a good
these
point.
prayers
Yeah.
of intervention, it's a huge help. I know a lady friend of mine who told me that she started maintaining a prayer journal of people, and she'd pray for them and cross them off when this prayer was answered or
Yes.
that prayer was answered. But she said it just changed her prayer life completely from something she really didn't know about to a very strong prayer life.
And John, I kind of got convicted because I would say, I'll pray for you. Well, we all get busy if we say that.
Yeah.
And how often do we really follow through? And so I literally said, okay, I need to create a list so that when I say that, I have another way of taking care of that.
Yeah, at the start of God at Work, we normally ask everybody to put their phone on vibrate.
John
You know.
wasn't listening.
He runs the show, so he doesn't have to.
He can do what he
I got to
wants.
turn this thing off.
One of the things you just talked about. Also, I love the list idea. That's great, and I think I'm going to start doing that. Hopefully, I can keep track of that list better than John did our list of guests. But
Your
that's
job.
a whole nother
That's
story.
your job.
My job. See? Taking the opportunity to do it right then and there is also another avenue that I've tried to participate in more. Is if that opportunity presents itself, instead of saying, I'll keep you in my thoughts and prayers, or I'll be praying for you. Would you like to pray right now? And that's something I learned from John, and going through God at Work and talking more in the workplace is if the opportunity presents itself in the now, take advantage of it, because we get so busy we forget,
Yes.
and we may get back to it eventually, and we may say a blanket prayer because we forget the specifics. But if we do it in the now, not only have we not forgotten about it, but it's so much more impactful, I think, for the individual that's having that tough time or looking for some love. And so
I've actually gotten cards from clients that say, I've never met a lawyer like you. And it
Was
a
that
great-
good or bad?
I don't know. but they just said, it just meant so much to me that you
Yeah.
stopped and prayed with me. So that's, I think it's very important that we do these kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's, the two great commandments are what? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, mind, and strength. And this other one is love your neighbor as yourself.
So-
There's no better way to love your neighbor as yourself than to pray with your neighbor.
That's right.
And show them your faith. I think just really does lift them up.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, there's something else I'd like to explore. We got a few minutes here. There's a thing called the Alpha program that we've put on here at the church. Could you briefly explain what that is?
So Alpha is just kind of an outreach program to go out into the community and kind of attract in. I like to call it our fringe Christians.
People that don't like to go to church regularly. In other words.
Not only do they not like to maybe go to church on a regular basis, but they may have questions about faith. They may not believe. They may be not believing but feel a hole or a void in their lives. And so it's kind of that outreach tool that takes us out of the four walls of the church and out into the community. And we did, I've done 2 sessions at the store where we do a after hours, and we get together and had the Alpha program. And it's just a great outreach tool. And Alpha was a pretty instrumental tool in my life over the past couple years because my brother passed away about 3 years ago, and we were going through the Alpha program at that time here at the church. We decided before we go out in the community, let's get our congregation wrapped around it so that they understand what we're talking about and what Alpha is. And so we did it. We did the 14 weeks here in the church every Wednesday, and went through the program. And we were about halfway through that program when my brother was in the hospital. And the program we were talking about that particular Wednesday was, if you feel a calling, go and heed that calling right then and there. Don't put it off. Don't put it on the back burner. Don't lay it to the side and think that you'll get to it later. And Jason, at the time, was recovering, and we had no idea what 2 days later would bring to us. But I called David, our pastor, and I said, David, we just had this Alpha. I said, I really would like it if you would go up and meet with my brother and just talk to him and see how he's doing. And I think our spiritual leaders aren't always as open to going out and meeting new people and sharing the word as we think they are. I think they work so hard to present and do for the congregation that going outside is sometimes a little bit of a struggle for them, maybe.
There are a lot of demands on their time, too.
There are, yeah, exactly. And David didn't know my brother. He knew of my brother, but he didn't know him. And David went up there thinking, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he just, actually, long story short, on his way up there, he's like, you know what, I'm going to stop and buy a Bible. And so he stopped at Books A Million, bought a Bible, and went up and met with Jason. And long story short, hour and a half later, Jason had confessed his life, professed his life to God, and they just had the most wonderful hour and a half. And to the point that my brother called me from the hospital room, and I could just hear him quivering in his voice, asking me to come up and visit with him after work, because he was just dying to tell me this story about how he had committed his life to Christ and how this was going to create some new beginnings for him. And little did we know that new beginning was him passing away and rising up to be next to the throne. But he just it was just I'm just getting lost for words and teared up here, but it just was a remarkable time, and it really just helped further solidify my faith, and that I've been so comfortable with the loss of my brother because I know where he's at and where he was going. And it was Alpha that brought us to that, and not just me. It helped shape David and drive David to go fulfill that in the moment, rather than putting it off and saying, I'll go up there the next day or two. Well, my brother passed away a day and a half later. It was, if David hadn't gone right then and there,
That visit gave huge comfort to your family.
Entire
huge
family.
comfort.
Yep.
And I can testify to that
Yep.
because my wife is good friends with your mom, and
Yep.
I know about those things. Yeah, so it was very, very comforting.
Yeah.
And I would point out for the folks at home, the Alpha program is a series that is produced over in London, actually, and by Holy Trinity Brompton Church. And it's a terrific series. It's a series of actors who answer questions like, what is faith all about? What are the scriptures? Who is the Holy Spirit? Who is Jesus? Who is Jesus to you? and they just talk about things in a way that people can relate to. It's not preaching. It's not
It's real life scenarios.
Real life, everything
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
But yet the questions are eternal questions that
Absolutely.
everybody struggles with.
Yep.
And there's a series of 15 or 16 videos, I think?
Yep.
Something like that. So Dan was impacted here at the church with that. I'm going to tell a little story about you.
Yeah.
And when he went back to his office, he just felt the need to be doing something for the Lord. And he felt this Alpha series was the way to do it. So he started showing it in your shop after hours, as you
Yep.
said, bringing in the group that likes to come to you and ride with you.
Yep.
And so there were just a lot of lives that were affected as a result of your seeing this. I can testify that Steve Slabaugh and I, in our ministry with the sheriff's office, going into the prisons, we use the Alpha group to meet with the inmates and go over that with tremendous success, I might add. It really was a great program that everybody enjoyed. So I'm a believer in the Alpha program. If you hear about the Alpha program, wow, what's that? Nobody really. It's just a series of videos that you can use. You can use in your home for small group studies. You can use it in your office. You can use it anywhere you'd like to use it. You can get it on the internet, easily available. Anybody can order the series of videos, and I think you'd really be blessed if you did something like that. You might try that.
Yeah, try that. Take a look at that.
Hey, so to go off script now that we've had our infomercial, it's alphausa.org. I'm talking to the microphone. I should be talking to the camera, right? So something weighing on me over the past couple weeks is all of the unrest. So, we follow COVID and we start to think we're getting back to work and we start to think things are getting back to normal. Then we have the incident in Minneapolis and all the racial issues that has brought to light. And then now the possibility of a resurgence of COVID and all of that, the riots. So what I'm struggling with is how do we get back to the fundamentals and how do we not get so focused and so driven by the media? It's just something I struggle with every day. I get worked up about it because I hear it and see it, and I don't know. I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that.
A lot of it begins in the morning when you get up, and I find that if I turn on the TV, that's the worst thing I can do. If I don't, if I stick to my morning ritual, which says basically you get up, and folks, my wife's a nurse, so she usually has to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm getting her out of the house first. And then I have time to do my morning ritual, which is really my devotional time, my prayer time. And then I have a sequence of other things that I go through in that first half hour to an hour that's not news media, not
Right.
emails, not that stuff that we get off focus. And I'll tell you, Dan, when I do that, it makes a huge difference in my day versus turn on the TV and the news cycle hits you, and now all that uncertainty that the news just brought into my life is what I'm thinking about all day.
Yeah, and I think I need to do a better job of that. I go through these cycles,
It's hard.
right?
It's hard. I mean, I do too.
I go through this period of time where I'm super focused and my mornings look like this.
Yep.
And then, I get up, have a cup of coffee, and check Fox News, and then you're just like, ah!
Well, it's like the coronavirus, when it first hit. We were talking about that earlier before we went on. It's like that first 2 weeks that it hit, I oscillated. I mean, I sat there at the office and really got nothing done because of the uncertainty and the news cycle. And when I got home and worked from home, I tried to keep the TV off as much as I could.
My thoughts are these. We know what we know. And we know what we know, we think we know.
That's pretty profound.
That's right. But we think we know what we know by what others tell us. We learn hugely that way. We can read, we can do whatever you want to do. But today people learn from where? The social media.
Yeah.
They're constantly on social media, and there are many false messages that come through the social media that people take as mantra that you know, they can rely upon. And it's just not so. You know, if you think about, as an example, we'll take the Muslim nation. They think they're exactly right. They hate Americans. Americans are brought up to say the Muslims are wrong, so we have problems with that. You know, or this one or that one or the other one. The Russians are bad. These people are bad.
Yeah.
And that's what we think, because that's what we're brought up to think. And they think just as fervently about us the way we think about them. You know, and it's about that bad with the blue and the red states anymore, you know. It's,
Right.
And so people aren't seeking solutions, they're focusing on the problems. And that's a real problem, I think. And unfortunately, social media just perpetuates that type of thing. As you say, you know, you get up, some people watch a certain news channel because that's from their point of view. Some people watch this because that's from their point of view. And so it doesn't do anything to bring people together, just perpetuates the divide.
Yeah.
And that's our society today.
Yeah, and it can't be healthy when your first go-to, and I'm talking from me, my first go-to is I get up, I'm not even out of bed yet, I'm checking my feed, I check my emails, I check my messenger messages. All of that happens before I even get out of the bed.
So your mind is already focused on a certain
And stupid me, my wife's downstairs doing her devotional, you know, hasn't picked up her phone yet. She's got a more demanding job than I do, and I guess I just need
There's
to.
a message there, Dan.
There is. I'm working through this with you guys. Yes, I need to do better.
Yeah.
First thing I should pick up is my Bible,
Amen, sir.
not my phone.
First person you should talk to is God.
Absolutely.
You know, so
It's the last one I talk to when I go to bed. Should be the first one when I wake up, right?
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Your day will go a lot better, I think.
All right, so we'll close God at Work with those final words.
Well, I think we're out of time anyway. That's
Oh,
right.
okay.
So we do want to thank Dan Andrews and Philip Statler for joining us today. It's been a very good conversation. I've quite enjoyed it. And, you know, God is always with us. That's the thing to always remember. You talked about how you got very depressed, but it was God who lifted you up. The people of God came to see you, and God himself acted in your life to help resurrect you. I think oftentimes God works most in our lives when we are down like that. So
For sure.
So, thank
But
you,
we
God.
should not forget him in the highs.
In the good times, that's
No,
right,
sir,
that's right.
that's a
We
good
have a
point.
tendency
Yeah,
of,
that's a good point, too.
losing our
Anyway.
focus.
Thank you, folks, for joining us. God bless. We look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday at 8. Thank you.